Okay, we're at the Park Plaza, downtown Boston, room 1234. Waiting on our room service. We got here about midnight local time. It's 10 after 1 local time right now. $28 cab fare from the airport, although it looked to me like we was going in circles. There I am in the mirror. This place kind of reminds you of the Elms. Kind of an older, grand style. Hotel. And that's where we're staying at. Okay. Here's our hotel. Here's the truck. We're at the Boston Park Plaza on Arlington Street. There's the other front of it. The one I showed you is where the check-in area is. There's the rest of it. It's an old part of Boston. There's the scenery as you look around. There's a subway station right ahead. I'm going to go check out the area and buy the Gray Line bus stop. Okay, this is in front of our hotel, but it's actually across the street, so it doesn't belong to the hotel. And there we are, Boston Park Plaza. Here's a fountain, again in front of our hotel, but across the street, so it's not part of the hotel. I don't know how many stories it is, but it's way up there. Okay, there's one of the restaurants at our hotel. I don't know what that noise is behind me. There's another restaurant. And then there's a little coffee shop, donut shop. And there's another entrance over there. I think over there is going to be the bus pickup right there. Sorry for the jerking. I was looking to see if I was going to get run over. I'll know here shortly. And that's the start of our hotel. It goes way up there. And then there's the entrance over there. Hey, there we are in front of our hotel. There's a Ben and Jerry's. A couple of other stops. And then there's a Legal Seafoods. We'll probably go over there and eat sometime. I read about them. They seem to be pretty popular in the area. Okay, this is our hotel from about a block away. There's this real pretty greenery area, but you'll see it comes to kind of a point. It just kind of reminds you maybe the Western Auto Building in Kansas City. But that is our hotel right there. Okay, I was just in City Place. It's got food court and different kind of shops, and it's also got our Gray Line tour, so that's where I'll go to get it tomorrow. there didn't seem to be a lot of retail shops, and it seemed to be under renovation or construction. It wasn't overly fancy. It wouldn't even do justice to like the food court at Independence Center. Okay, this is on the other side of our hotel. I don't know if it's the front side or the back side. This is not the hotel, this is a restaurant that I thought was very unique. You can see what you think. Right down to the castle on the top. And again, I'm standing right next to the restaurant, shooting the general area. Over there is the Boston Police Command Post. I don't know why it's here unless this is one of their headquarters. Okay, this is a view outside our window. You can see there's that castle-looking restaurant that Smith and Woolsey that I was looking at from down below, and that's what our view is from that window. And then I'll go over to the other window, and that's our view from the other window. So really it's not a bad city view considering all the big buildings and stuff. Okay, we're getting ready to eat at the Globe Cafe. And here's the menu. I'm going to have the steak tips cooked to your liking with seasoned vegetables and fries for $12.95. I don't know what Sheila's going to have. And we're just walking around Boston looking for a hair curler and a charger for the cell phone. Our other one blew up last night. There's a really old building up there. Just walking around downtown Boston. There's Sheila's broccoli soup.
It's a very different.
Okay, there's my steak tips and fries and vegetables. And Sheila got crab cakes. One more time, we're at the Globe Bar and Grill. Okay, we're getting ready to eat at M.J. O'Connor's. What are the specials?
Irish stew, chicken pot pie.
This is actually the one that's in our motel. And here's tonight's specials. I'm going to have a bowl of clam chowder, winner of the Boston Harbor Fest clam chowder, England's favorite. Okay, I've got clam chowder. Sheila's got onion soup. Sheila's on her second drink there. Okay, there's my Guinness beef stew. There's Sheila's. What did she have? There's one.
Shepherd's pie.
Shepherd's pie. I know it's kind of dark. It's kind of dark in here, so that's the best we're going to be able to show you. They have us, they call it atmosphere. Okay, it's Sunday morning. It's about 7:55. We're waiting for our Gray Line bus tour, the Total Experience tour. So we'll be taking it shortly.
Charles Street, and this is named after King Charles, who was first in charge of. I'll tell you just yet. I'm going to refer back to it later on, but I want you to remember that corner of the Boston Common, okay? And up here on the left, as we continue on Charles Street, is the Boston Public Gardens. And if you check out through underneath the trees there, you'll see the water, and that water is the only water left from before the landfill. Boston happens to be the largest landfilled city in the world, and you might even catch a glimpse of the bridge up there that goes over that water, and that is the smallest suspended bridge in the world also. That's where the swan boat rides are. They're done for the summer now, but there are 2 grown adult swans. I don't know if they're still on the water. I don't see them, but they're very noticeable, and they put them away in the zoo for the colder weather. Now, over here on the right, once we get through this light, you'll catch a glimpse there. You go a little bit, goes in the front of the Golden Dome of the Massachusetts State House, the oldest state house in the country. That's how high Beacon Hill once was, as high as that dome, and they used that for landfill also. They also painted that dome dark gray during World War I and II, because in the daytime with the sun shining on it, it could be seen for miles. Now over here, if you take a look underneath the trees once again, over on the second sidewalk, and there's one guy sitting on the bench over there, and you'll see Mother Duck and the little ducklings right in front of him. Can you see him on the sidewalk? Yeah. Where the lady is? Yeah. Back in the 1980s, Mrs. Gorbachev was here along with Mrs. Jackie Onassis, and she wanted to take him home with her to Russia. And Mrs. Onassis had some copies made and sent to her. There it is up on the right there, folks. Beacon Hill, known as the first neighborhood in the nation. Every one of those mansions averages $9 million a piece. It's quite a thing. You'll notice if you look down the street here, all the gas lanterns, they never shut them off. All in this Beacon Hill area. And up on the right there it is, folks. This is what I wanted to show you. The Cheers bar right here on the right. You'll recognize it, okay? And this was all filmed in Hollywood, but they always use the outside of this place, the Hampshire House, or the Bullfinch Club, in the TV show. And there were parts of 11 shows that were filmed right here in Boston using the outside. Okay, but I'll tell you folks, here in Boston, we refer to it as the biggest ripoff in the city. I'll tell you right now, folks, there's not a thing inside there that'll ever remind you of the TV show whatsoever, okay? Except for the very expensive t-shirts and sweatshirts and all that. Now, I'm on Arlington Street now, and I bring that up because it begins with an A. All the streets in the landfill over here on our right are all in alphabetical order that go north and south. Arlington, Berkeley, Clarendon, Dartmouth, Exeter, Fairfield, and so on and so forth, and all the way up to Massachusetts Avenue. And here we have Commonwealth Ave, 2 one-ways with a beautiful park in between. If you folks like to walk in the evening or in the morning, this is the street to do it. Beautiful statues along the way with for military, POW, MIA, police statues, and firemen, and even marathoners, okay? So I definitely suggest it's a beautiful street like that, and very safe. And a lot of the Boston Marathon is run on Commonwealth Avenue. It goes like this way out into the suburbs. Now, if you take a quick look to your left, you'll see quite a statue of George Washington on a horse. And you might notice that one hoof of that horse is raised. Now, that statue itself started the tradition of a military man on a statue on a horse. If one hoof is raised, he was injured in battle. Both front hoofs raised, he was killed in battle. And here you go, ladies, Newbury Street. This is the Rodeo Drive of Boston. You'll start recognizing some of the store names right away. Designer shops. And it stays like that all the way down to Massachusetts Avenue. Okay, it's a beautiful street. That's where all the movie stars go and have their pictures taken and all. On 3 of the 4 corners of this intersection here, we have the Arlington Green Line MBTA station. And folks, I'll tell you, while you're in Boston, I definitely suggest you use it. We have the first underground subway station in the United States, the 4th in the world. I'll tell you, folks, it's very clean, very safe, and very inexpensive. And if you utilize it, you'll save a lot of money and get places a lot faster. Up here on the right, used to be right on the banks of the water, the castle, quite a place here. And you notice where it came up to the water, it once had a moat around it and a drawbridge right here on the right, as everything here is all landfill. Look at the work done on that. This is built back in the early 1800s, one of the first spots ever for Army boot camp. That was even used as the University of Massachusetts at one time. I'm going to make you experts on brick. Take a look at this building right here, folks. You notice the brick, the different size brick, and the large gaps in between the bricks, and the meticulous work done with the brick to make the designs. It shows you how old these buildings here. Now, not the one up the front here, that's been redone, but some of the ones in the back there, these used to be the summer homes of the real rich people. They'd take their horse and buggies 10, 12 miles for their summer vacation. Okay, we're going to take a right here onto Route 90, the second longest road in the country. All right, and by the way, notice here, might as well get used to it now, folks. Red lights are just suggestions. Okay, as long as you do it safely. Now we're going to cross the longest road in the country, I assume, as long as we go back through the suburbs, and I'll show it to you when we do that. This road here starts at Logan Airport, right under Boston Harbor, in the Ted Williams Tunnel, Route 90 is, and all the way out to Seattle, Washington. Now, this landfill I was telling you about, this actually started back in the 1840s due to, of all things, a potato famine in Ireland. And all the Irish folks starving to death looking for work, they moved over here to Boston, and they put them to work all right. They brought them out to a suburb called Needham Heights specifically, where for close to 40 years they dug it up shovelful by shovelful. All the dirt, rocks, tree stumps, anything they could find, placed it in the boxcars of the train, brought it in about 12 miles and dumped it off into what is known now as the Back Bay of Boston. Well, it was known as that once too, as an actual bay, all water. We're on top of landfill and underneath it too, right now. And this is where the British took their boats right through this area. 700 British soldiers on their way to Concord, none of them knowing where they were going or why, and they went right through this area, the John Hancock and the Prudential, and then they got to that Yellow Stripe Bridge area, that's Massachusetts Avenue, and they went north until they hooked up to the Charles River. This wasn't a road, then it was all water, and they went further west, and then they went to land right where the spies told them to. But wait till you hear what happens when they went to land, a big part of the story. All right, when we go further into it. But folks, almost as important as the Revolutionary War, not as important, but almost, there it is. Fenway Park, home of the Boston Red Sox. There you go. The oldest baseball stadium in the country, built in 1912. And we won the World Series then in 1912, 1914, 15, 16, and 1918. You'll see the center field scoreboard right here in the left, and then you'll see the Coca-Cola bottles on top of the green monster, the left field wall. You know, back in 1918, we had a ball player on the team you might have heard of by the name of Babe Ruth. And in 1920, the owner of the Boston Red Sox back then, he needed money to put a play on called No No Nanette. And he sold Babe Ruth for $100,000 to some team in New York. I forget their name. I don't know. And Babe Ruth didn't want to move to New York. He moved his family up from Baltimore, and he put what we call the curse of the Babe on the Boston Red Sox. And he says, you'll never win another World Series for the rest of this century. And he was right. We never did. 86 years we went. And finally, 4 years into the new century, we did it. In 2004, there we were, playing that team from New York in the American League playoffs to get into the World Series. And obviously, because of bad umpiring, we were down 3 games to nothing. And we came back 4 games in a row. Wipe them out. I'll tell you, folks, what a blast. All right, never been done in professional baseball ever. And then a minor matter of some Cardinals in St. Louis. And we did it. We were world champs. I'm sorry. I'll calm down. This is how excited we are. That was 2 years ago. There's the walk for breast cancer, by the way. And on our right, there it is, the Charles River. This separates Boston from Cambridge on the north side of the city. Check it out, folks. The crew out there, they're getting ready for next weekend's head of the regatta race. I'll tell you more about that in a bit. But there's the Northeastern University crew boathouse over there. You know, folks, every morning, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning on this river, it is packed with the various colleges practicing, okay? All right, these colleges from all over the city of Boston and suburbs come out here to practice. If that river isn't frozen, they're practicing. So it's quite a thing, folks. I'll tell you, we're now in a section of Boston called Allston-Brighton, and this would be the northwest corner of Boston. It was predominantly Irish at the beginning. It's now more of a United Nations type of land here. You know, folks, in the city of Boston, or any suburb that touches the city of Boston, 48 four-year colleges and universities. All right, now go out one more suburb, 77 four-year colleges and universities. So you can imagine what it's like in September and all. All right, when all the traffic and everything, and I'll tell you a little bit more. You know, we're not in Cambridge yet. We haven't gone over the Charles River. In Cambridge, we have the oldest college in the United States since 1641, the first college, Harvard University, and also another one that's very famous, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, further referred to as MIT. And this is where they started their colleges, but they're on different ends of the city of Cambridge, but I'll tell you, they still own a lot of property in Boston. We're going to go through the sports facilities of Harvard and the business school and other places. Harvard Medical School is in Boston, and they even own stuff way out in Lincoln, Concord, and all the areas that will be going out there, and I'll show it to you when we get out there. You know, Harvard and MIT, obviously, very intelligent students from all over the world that attend these colleges, but there is one big difference between the two colleges, and that's the fact that the MIT sports teams absolutely stink. I don't know what's wrong with them. They waste their time studying or something instead of practicing. And when they're down by a lot of points at halftime and have absolutely no chance of getting back into the game, they just put their hands on their hips and they look at the other team and they say, that's all right, that's okay, you're going to work for me someday. Now, the top population of Boston is about 950,000. These two homes on the left there, the brown one and green one, are very typical types of homes in Boston. They're called triple-deckers, and a lot of double triple-deckers with 6 apartments in them, and there are miles and miles of these types of homes throughout the city of Boston. Now, as we come around the corner here, we'll see right in front of us the first, so obviously the oldest, football stadium in the world. And this is Harvard Stadium, built in 1899. There it is, right there, folks. And I'm sure you've already seen it, believe it or not. It's in a lot of movies. Okay, we have Love Story, right? Ally McGraw, Ryan O'Neal. Even one of the more recent ones was Legally Blonde that used this. The New England Patriots played here for 2 years in their move between Boston and Foxborough, the suburb they play in now. A lot of presidents have used this when they were in college, either for Harvard or for another college that they attended. 1 out of every 6 U.S. presidents has attended Harvard University. All right, this is, right now, this is the oldest building in the world of reinforced concrete. It's not the first one ever to use it, but it was right in the era when they first started using reinforced concrete, and I'll show you. Now, it might look a little different than what you've ever seen before, and that's because for the second time since 1899, poison ivy got in the ivy, and they've had to take it down because you'll see the blotches on the stadium, and they've had to take it affects the cement, so they decided the second time to take it down. Harvard football undefeated again this year. They got a great football team, national champs in hockey, both men and women, national and world champs in crew. Unbelievable crew teams. They have a coach by the name of Harry Parker, who is like the Newt Rockney of crew. So their sports are great. On the right, the Harvard Business School. That ivy on top of the big leaves is the kind of ivy that grew on the Harvard Stadium. And we have the other sports facilities over here, including the last one on the left, which is the Bloodget Pool. And I'll tell you a little bit about swimming here in a bit. Okay, you can see these old buildings here. Administrative. Now see all the chimneys? You know why? Because when they first made these, there was no oil heat, gas heat, or anything like that. Folks, take a look on your right here as we go over this highway, then the Charles River. I mean, the message is pretty clear here, isn't it? About what's allowed on this road. Okay, look at cars only, right? You're gonna hit that with a truck or a bus. Well, every September it happens, folks. You get all these kids coming into college and their Hertz rented trucks full of their stereo equipment and beer, and they're not looking at the signs, and whammo, they wedge the truck right underneath the bridge. And they always show that picture. Here's the Harvard Women's Boathouse, by the way. They always show that picture in the Globe and the Herald. Usually 4 guys with MIT sweatshirts standing there, scratching their heads. Oh, what do I do now? Not knowing they have to flatten all 4 tires and back it up. On the right, some dormitories of Harvard University. Okay, this is a dormitory that John F. Kennedy spent 2 of his 4 years at while attending Harvard. Notice the brick once again, you're all experts in how old that building is. On the left, we have the John F. Kennedy School of International Government. Folks, you guys already know about this too, believe it or not. You know, they use that in national publications and national news and 60 Minutes or whatever. You know, and they say according to the Harvard School of Government or according to the JFK School of Government, and you automatically assume that what they say is correct. You know, there are leaders from all over the world that attend courses there. There have even been leaders from different countries that are having problems that have bet in that building to solve their problems. Of course, we never know that until after they leave for security reasons. But I'll tell you a quick story. A few years ago, about 6 years ago actually, there was a young lady, there was a princess from a very small but oil-rich country, the kind of country you never hear of, you know, but very rich. And her parents sent her here for a 3-week course. And when they landed her plane in the middle of the winter at Logan Airport, she had brought with her 3 camels as gifts for the professors. Now, what the heck do you do with 3 grown adult camels in the middle of the winter, right? Well, veterinarians all around them and everything was fine. But I still remember seeing that picture, and actually it was on the news, a film of these 3 camels all huddled together in a corner in the middle of a blizzard. They must have had some pretty good stories to tell their cousins when they got back. Folks, Harvard Square, this is it. Harvard Yard, there it is, right there. We're going to do a complete circle around Harvard Yard. Now, when Harvard started, it wasn't known as Harvard in 1641. It was nor was this known as Cambridge. This area was known as Newtown, and Harvard was known as the Newtown Theological Seminary. And in 1649, a man that lived in this area of Newtown died, and in his will he left all the money to this Newtown Theological Seminary, and his name was John Harvard. So what the heck, let's name it after him. And if you look straight down there, there's a statue of John Harvard. Okay? And I hope you folks I'm going to try to let you off here. All right? It's not a part of the tour, but what the heck, we're here. Why not? All right? And I hope you get to walk up to the statue of John Harvard and rub his left foot. Guaranteed 10 points on your IQ. How's that? Okay. You'll know which foot to rub when you get up there, no doubt about it. But I want you to know that it doesn't take effect until after the tour, all right? Now, you know, my wife and I, we like to walk. We like to go travel all around the country. And wherever we go, people always know we're from Boston by our perfect accents. And they all want us to say, park your car in Harvard Yard. All right, so there you go. You heard it official from a Bostonian. But as we go around, you might also notice that, except for out here, there's no cars are allowed in Harvard Yard. All freshman dormitories are in Harvard Yard. Okay, there is also no classrooms, but there is some administrative stuff and a cafeteria, and also the main part of it is the Widener Library. Now, the Widener Library was donated by the Widener family. They had a son that attended Harvard, and Mr. and Mrs. Widener and their son went on a nice little cruise once. Unfortunately, the name of the ship was the Titanic, and Mr. Widener and his son passed away in that, and Mrs. Widener took the family money and donated it to Harvard as the Widener Library, the largest library in the world, more books than any other library. This Lamont Library here is a part of the Widener Library, including the Gutenberg Bible, an original copy. Now, one of the stipulations of her donating all this money was that all Harvard students have to pass a swim test before they graduate. How's that? Now, there are other colleges that do that. That's why I pointed out the Blood Get Pool. Oh, God bless us, we got a parking spot. Unbelievable. This is great. So there are, oh, I gotta beat this bus, hang on. There are other colleges that do that. And, but that is one of the stipulations, is that, well, they don't call me Fast Eddie for nothing. There we go, beautiful. Maybe a little room for him there too. All right. Okay, now folks, it is, let's see what the clock, what the time is. All right, 9:52. By the way, up on the left, you'll see it. There's an American flag and a digital clock that also says 9:52. And underneath that is Aubon Payne. Okay, coffee and donuts. A couple of quick things. Those of you can see it. The J. August Harvard Shirt Shop, if it's open, if you got a lot of money, go right ahead. Very, very expensive. The cheapest souvenirs are down at stop number 1 of the Beantown Trolley. The kids that have the carts on the sidewalks, all right? Same stuff, only much less expensive. There's bathrooms up there. Walk up to the street light that's right up here and take a right. That'll take you right to the statue of John Harvard. There's also out-of-town news in the middle. Walk around. If you have a camera, you'll never find anything that says Harvard University, okay? There's, it's just the way it is. You can leave anything you want on the bus. I went to 12 years of Catholic school, don't worry. Nobody will be on the bus. Now it's 9:53. How about 10:10, okay? Is that cool with everybody? Here we go.
What do they call this, Cambridge Square? Let's go find that statue and rub his feet. Oh, here it is. Well, I don't remember who the statue is up. John Harvard. Here we are again at Harvard Square.
This worked out great. Now I hope you got to rub that foot of John Harvard. You won't believe it, probably starting tomorrow, how smart you are, it's unbelievable. Up here on the right, this wooden house, this yellow house, this is the only wooden structure here. Can you folks in the back hear me all right? You can, okay? And this was the home of all Harvard presidents. Up until, is there any questions there, folks? No? Up until the 1840s, right here. Not only that, but General George Washington stayed here for a week before he took over the Continental Army. And I'll show you right where that happened, okay? You might notice that's the only wooden structure in the area. Over here, underneath the tree, here he is, the chess master with the straw hat there. And he'll play you or teach you how to play chess for $2. Right there, all those tables have chess boards in them. And I was there once, my wife was out shopping as usual, and I was over there, I must have been tying a sneaker or something, and all of a sudden I came up, and who's starting to put some chess pieces down but Bill Walton, all 7 foot tall with the big red hair and red beard and everything. I go, wow, this is unbelievable. He says, well, you want to play chess? Oh, yeah. He says, you know how to play, don't you? Well, I know the rules. I don't have much strategy. He goes, well, thanks anyway. So he walked away. Oh, yeah, killed me. But what the heck? Just because I didn't have strategy. Right now, by the way, on a personal note, now I don't tell many people, you guys are pretty cool though. I'm very proud of the fact, you know, I just missed graduating from Harvard University. All I needed was 4 more years. That was it. I'd have had that degree. Yep. Right in front of us, there it is, the Harvard Law School. It doesn't say it on it, I know. It says public administration, but that is it. And behind it, also behind it is the Natural Resource Building. Folks, they have a glass museum there that you will never forget. So if you get a chance to get back here on the Red Line, 12 minutes from downtown Boston, to visit the Glass Museum, it is quite a thing. People are very impressed with it. This home with the 4 pillars, that was the home of Mary Radcliffe, and in the late 1890s she had roving Harvard professors teaching women in her attic, as Harvard was an all-male school at the time. And then in the early 1900s, the United States government made Radcliffe into an all-women's college. And it stayed as a sister school to Harvard University until 1963, when Harvard University bought Radcliffe University and went co-ed. Now, you know, all Harvard students that are female, they have a choice on their diploma of having either Harvard or Radcliffe. Same with the sports teams of the woman here, and the crew team picked Radcliffe. So it's Radcliffe University, actually, that won the national and world championships. And over here, up on the front right, you'll see the cannons, and then some, look like gravestones around it and all. Folks, right there, it'll tell you right on one of the gravestones on July 31st, 1775, General George Washington took over the whole Continental Army right here on the Cambridge Commons. Okay, that elm tree surrounded by the black wrought iron fence is a branch from the actual elm tree that he did stand under when he did this. Okay, so quite a thing. Now that happened after the battle at Bunker Hill. Okay, and I'll try to explain to you why and all that by the time we get, as we get in there and into the story. And he took it over from a man by the name of General Artemus Ward. Now we're still in Cambridge, a very affluent city of over 100,000 people, has a distinction of having one of the higher per family average incomes of cities and towns of 100,000 people or more. Some of the folks that lived in behind this area here, you might have heard of Edwin Land, owner and inventor of Polaroid camera. Also a lady by the name of Mrs. Julia Child, the French chef. She lived here. She used the kitchen in her home as her studio the last 7 years that she was on TV, and in her will donated it to a culinary college here in Boston. But the kitchen that you probably know more of, that was in the studio here in Boston, where she filmed everything that was on TV, was donated to the Smithsonian Institute. Now this next street, we're going to take a right here. This is named Brattle Street, known as Tory Row. And Tories were a group of people back in that era, 1770 or so, that were very rich. And the thing that made them different than the other colonists was the fact that they didn't want to break away from England. Because for the reason was the decision that we base most of our decisions on, they were afraid they'd lose their money. Okay, and I'll tell you more about the Tories, but first up here on the right, This yellow home, beautiful home, was the home of an English professor here at Harvard University. You might have heard him by the name of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, right here on the right. Professor here at Harvard University. You might have heard him by the name of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, right here on the right. He's the man that wrote the poem, The Midnight Ride, that made Paul Revere so famous. You'll see the stuff right in the front walk there. You know, he was, his first wife passed away, and Mr. Longfellow remarried, and his new son-in-law gave his new son-in-law and daughter that home as a wedding present. All right? And I'll refer back to that poem a little bit. See up here on the left, the slate roof, the white chimney with the black band around it? That home was owned by the Tories. Home was built before 1775, as most of these homes were that look at now, something like that one, you can tell that, and some others. And we'll see some more Tory homes.
You can't take that
go
out,
on. See, as they tell the story, sometimes I stop and change the subject, and this will happen all day. So it's just the way it works, all right? The Tories, they thought they were so rich and powerful that everybody would follow their lead. And most of the Tories now made their money from fishing, either by owning fishing vessels or being captains of fishing ships and all, as fishing was so much more important back in those days than it is now. All right, now I'm going to pull over and let these cars go by me as we take a look at quite a Tory house here on the right. Tell by the chimneys once again. And most of the Tories now live along the waterfront. These folks here that were rich and had these homes, they probably owned major businesses back in 1770, you know, but still in Boston, and these were their homes out here. Check out this home here on the right, and how solid it is, and definitely a Tory home by the big white chimney with the black band around it. This home here was built in 1685. All right, quite a thing there, huh? You know, I'd live there. I might straighten those shutters out, but not a bad looking home at all. See the corners and how they built the corners there and made it solid with the granite block and all. Now, there's one Tory that we'll be talking about, and his name is Daniel Bliss. And believe it or not, he lived way out in Concord. Very odd for a Tory to live out there. As far as I know, he might have been the only one way out there. Concord is about 23 miles. Another Tory home here on the right, built in 1764. And it was very odd for a Tory to live way out there. He might have been the only one. And he definitely is a big part of the Revolutionary War and what happened. And I'll refer back to him, but now you know all about the Tories. Now we also had the colonists that lived there. Now let me give you an idea, because we're getting our minds around 1770. Some of the things I'd like you to know. First of all, I only pretty much talk about Boston and what occurred here and all. And wait till you see how fast I end this war too. After we leave Concord, I definitely abruptly. But at the same time, the folks that had been here, well, we learned through our grammar school books that the Pilgrims that arrived in the Mayflower in 1620 was kind of the beginning. We know for sure that's not true. There were Indians here, a lot of other folks that had found the waters off of Cape Cod for fishing, especially Portuguese folks and all. Well, so there were other people, Ponce de Leon in Florida, and all. We kind of think of them, you know, in the Thanksgiving celebration that we have and all. But now, this is 150 years later, and you'll see when we get into Concord, a sign that says, "Welcome to Concord, Incorporated, 1635." Just 15 years later, after the 102 Pilgrims arrived here. Okay, so it shows you, that's 80 miles away, how fast they moved out, and how many people came over real fast. Another thing is John Adams, our second president of the United States. You know, folks, he was a fifth generation Adams on this land when he was born. Okay, just to show you that definitely a lot of people. Now, the British soldiers, there were about 2,000 of them in Boston, and that was kind of a plush job to have, and they were kind of derogatory to the people, you know. They looked down upon them like they had left the mother country or their previous relatives had or whatever. And but at the same time, there was a real good chance that they were relatives of people here, or that they came from the same city and town in England, but also they collected the taxes, and they were policemen also. They were in charge, the British soldiers, and what really irked all the people was the fact that they paid these real heavy taxes. Now, to King George III, who was in charge of England, a very young man when he became king at 22 years old, and he definitely liked the money and all that, and he charged heavy taxes here, but the people had no vote on what happens with the money that they give it to them. They give them, it was taxation without representation. And this was the final straw that really upset them. Now, this was downtown Boston, where there were all sorts of businesses and all that. Okay, not like it is today, but it was definitely the hub and all. Out here, this was all farmers. You know, there were no mailboxes, street lights, telephone poles, kids waiting for me to go down a one-way. Right? There was even no cement on the streets. These were all horse paths and cow paths, little dirty paths that wound interwove between each other. The people out here knew they had no street signs on them. They would just pass. That's all they were. And the people that lived out here now, they kept together. All the farmers, which I would say probably 95% of the folks that lived out here were farmers. They kept together through churches or taverns. We'll see a bunch of the taverns. And nowadays we think of a tavern maybe to someplace to watch Monday Night Football and have a few beers, and I'm sure they definitely had alcohol in them back then. But they were also used as school homes for the children of the farmers, and also, for all I know, maybe every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night at 8 o'clock they had bingo. I don't know, but everybody would go there and they'd all meet there during the days, and it was the hub of the activities. And there were a lot of them out here, and we'll see a bunch of them, okay? Some of them involved in the story, and some of them that have been made into homes, and I'll point them out there, that aren't even a part of the story. So, that's how they did. Now, also, we had the three main messengers. Now, we all know about Paul Revere. We've heard his name. He was made so famous by the poem, The Midnight Ride. But, you know, he actually worked for a man by the name of William Dawes. He was the head of the messengers, and another man by the name of Dr. Thomas Prescott. And, you know, if the word Dawes rhymed with more words than Revere did, we'd probably know more about William Dawes from the poem. But they were all very important men in their own right. I link them together. And they would come out here to the taverns and the churches and talk to the people and give them the messages from Boston, and then the vice versa, back and forth, telling people what was going on. And then the farmers that lived out here, they'd come into Boston on weekends, right to the exact same spot that they still do, Haymarket Square. All right, I'll point it out to you when we get in. There'll probably be fruits and vegetables being sold right now. And they would sell their fruits and vegetables that they didn't need or didn't sell out here to other families. And then with the money they made, they'd pick up supplies, pay taxes on the supplies, then go to the British soldiers and pay taxes on their sales, okay? And they had no vote, so that's why they were just as upset that lived out there as they were in downtown Boston about this taxation without representation. So all the talking and all the churches and all the taverns were about these British soldiers. We don't need them. We don't need them in charge at all. We can take care of ourselves because they've been here for so long, and there were leaders amongst them, John Hancock, John and Sam Adams, and a lot more. Now this also happened in Philadelphia, Raleigh, Durham, New York, Hartford, Connecticut, okay? So now let's get into the story. All right, the beginning, we'll start February of 1770, and a bunch of men after work, they went to a tavern in downtown Boston called the Bunch of Grapes Tavern. There's still a plaque commemorating where it is on State Street. And then right 30 yards away from it was the British headquarters. That's still standing. I'll point that out to you. And the men were in the tavern with the usual conversation, these British soldiers. We don't need them. We can take care of ourselves and all. And they came out about 11:30, quarter, 12 at night. And then they started yelling at the members of the British headquarters. Now, this never happened as a group. Maybe once in a while, an individual might be vocal about his dislike of the British rule, but now it's all these soldiers all ganging around him, and more men came out of more taverns to join in. And then the sergeant in charge of the guards, he went and got some reinforcements. He couldn't believe it. You know, they actually started throwing snowballs at each other in anger. And this was unbelievable. Nothing like this ever happened. They were supposedly to respect these British soldiers. Now there's a bell on top of that building still there today, and that bell started ringing. And that bell was only used for Sunday services or in case there was a fire. So here it was a Friday night getting close to midnight, and the men started yelling, fire, fire. And that's what the British soldiers did. They fired their muskets right into the crowd of men, killing 6 men right there, including a man by the name of Crispus Attucks, known as the first black man to die for the freedom of our country. Well, this was unbelievable. The people were so upset. Paul Revere, William Dawes, and Thomas Prescott, the messengers, what they did was they rode all the way down to Philadelphia to spread the word of what happened, to rile the people up, to get them all upset to know what happened in the other states, or not states and the territories. Okay? Of course, by the time they got to Iacp, it was probably 30 people killed. By the time they got to Philadelphia, 50 people killed. And this is how it became known as the Boston Massacre. And then the word got back to King George III about this. Well, he couldn't believe it. This rebellious Boston, what's wrong with them? Why do they like that? Why don't they love me? I try to treat them as fairly as everybody else. So what do you think he did? Raise the taxes. Okay? And then he also made sure that everybody was in there by 11 o'clock every night. That's it. In downtown Boston. Nobody out and about. Except out here, the farmers, they went to bed early anyways. He didn't care about the folks out here. See, the British soldiers never came out here. Okay? They had very few horses, but they were definitely right in downtown Boston. That's where he could collect all the taxes and the sales, and also the ships coming in and all that. All right, by the way, we're in a town called Belmont. It's a beautiful town. Our Governor Mitt Romney lives here, and folks, it'll get better and better as we keep going. All right, so things lay low for a few years, all right? But little by little, what people were doing out here, and this was to be kept very secret, was they were starting to collect munitions, muskets, musket balls, gunpowder, cannons, cannonballs, and all this. And they decided that they would do it way out in Concord, as I say, as the crow flies, some 23 miles out. And the British soldiers would never know anything about it at all. But except for the farmers that came into Boston and vice versa, back and forth, all right? And they figured they'd never find out. But a lot of secrets were very hard to keep back then. And one of the reasons was you had all these British soldiers, for the most part between 18 and 28 years old, and there's no difference in kids today. First thing on their minds were the girlfriends, you know? And they would date the daughters of the merchants and farmers and all that. And somehow or another, these secrets would get passed between them as these young ladies would fall in love with a British soldier boyfriend. And it was probably, pretty good to marry a British soldier maybe. That was kind of, to do that would have been real good for a young lady. I don't know. But that's how secrets got passed. So anyways, things laid low for a few years after the Boston Massacre. And then a man by the name of John Hancock, a very well-respected, intelligent, and very rich man, who, by the way, made all his money through smuggling. You know, he owned a lot of ships, and they would go out into the ocean and meet ships from other countries, and he'd buy the goods and bring them back not only to Boston, but the other areas, Raleigh, Durham, Philadelphia, Washington, New York, and all, and sell these goods, but no taxes that went back to King George III. And this really upset him. And he knew of John Hancock. Well, he knew that 3 ships were coming in from England full of tea. And he loved, the people here were of British descent. For the most part, they loved their tea. And this tea actually came from India, but it was made to go to England first and pay taxes on it. And then King George would buy a lot of it and then send it over here to Boston to make money. Okay, and they came over. He knew that they were here, so he had a big meeting of 90 men right in Faneuil Hall, the same room where we eat today, the rotunda room, as I take this 11-foot bus and put it under this 10-foot 3-inch bridge. I duck a little bit. All right, we're on. And this is Belmont, by the way. I want you to remember this area was called Monotony back then. Revolutionary War. And I'll refer back to it after a bit. And after this bank here, the beautiful town hall, very old. Every city and town has one, but here's one that we'll see right here. Look at that, huh? And beautiful old building. You might see some bars going across the roof. That's to break up the ice as it slides down that slate roof. So anyways, he had this big meeting of 90 men there in Faneuil Hall, knowing that 3 ships had come over from England full of tea. And being as they were going to do this after 11 o'clock at night, he had the men dressed in disguise as Indians. And they went over to these 3 ships and threw 366 chests of tea into the water. You know, in today's prices, that would be worth over $1 million worth of tea. And now you got 90 men, all right, dressing up in disguise as Indians in the middle of the night. You know there's a few Budweisers involved here somewhere, right? So one of the guys, you know what he was doing? He was stealing the tea, shoving it in his boots and pockets and all, and he was arrested for this. And that tea that he stole was used as evidence against him, and is now on display right next to that old British headquarters. We refer to it as the old State House, but it was, I'll point it out to you, we get back to Boston, in the Boston Visitor Center, and if you go in there, if it's not free, it only costs $1, and it has a lot of other remnants of the Revolutionary War, Civil War, and all that. So I definitely suggest you go in. If it's not free, it only costs $1. It's called Boston Visitor Center. So anyways, the word got back to King George about this. King George III, oh, he couldn't believe it. And all the money he lost, that was it. Raising taxes again, obviously. But then he sent over a man over here to Boston who was like the General George Washington of the British Army. Very smart, intelligent, militaristic man by the name of General Gage. And he sent him over here and he told him, I want you to get over there to Boston and straighten these people out. And also, I've been hearing these rumors about some munitions being stored somewhere way outside of Boston and Concord or something. So find out what the heck's going on and get rid of those munitions if you can. And General Gage came over, and the first thing he did was, he also wanted John Hancock arrested and brought back to England to stand trial for the Tea Party. He was out here hiding. We'll see where he is. And he came out here, and the first thing he did was he brought 3 of his best soldiers over from England. And they came out here, and he put them on horseback, dressed them up to look like farmers and all, like the people here. And he told them, I want you to show them how to get to the first church or tavern, and get out there amongst all these little dirt paths, and map them all out, and go from tavern to tavern, asking how to get to Concord at each tavern, and map them all out. When you get to Concord, find out where these munitions are, and see, and come back with this information for me. And they were spies, is what they were. But the people out here, even though they were just farmers, church-going, family-raising men, good people, well, they knew there was something odd about these guys. They had definite British accents, where the people had been here so long, their accents changed a little bit, you know, and they would ask them, you know, where you from? Maybe they'd say somewhere in New York or Philadelphia, and they didn't know answers to questions they asked them. So there was something wrong about them, and the word got to the right tavern that we'll see in downtown Concord, that these men were on their way to Concord before they got there. So when they did get there and started asking about munitions, the men at the tavern kicked them right out. Said, get out of here. We don't want you guys here. We don't know who you are. What are you doing asking about munitions? We know no idea what you're talking about. And as they started to leave, one of the men that lived out there, by the name of Daniel Bliss, as I previously told you, the Tory, well, he thought it was his responsibility as a Tory to let these men know. He couldn't help but know where the munitions were. He only lived a half a mile away. We'll see when we get out there. And the munitions must have gone right past his house. We'll see his house and where he worked and everything. And he told them, just keep going down the dirt path. Then go over the North Bridge, right over the Sudbury River, and go up the hill. That's Puckatassa Hill. And the munitions are being stored up on top of Puckatassa Hill. Well, the spies had their info up. They came back to General Gage, gave the info and the maps. The first thing General Gage did, sent the 3 spies back to England. He didn't want anybody knowing that he had this information. He didn't want them telling anybody. And the only men that he told was Lieutenant Colonel Francis Smith and Major Pitcairn, the two leaders of the British forces. And he told them, get your men ready to get out there. We're going to get out there. Nobody knows we're going. Don't tell them where they're going or why they're going. Get them in shape because there's going to be some marching, no doubt, and walking. Okay, I can get you a little bit by boat, but I want you to get out there and find out. Here's the Belmont Country Club, beautiful place. We're going to see an even nicer one, believe it or not. And so they did. Now all the taverns, they got together and started talking about these 3 spies, and they figured out they did get out there to Concord finally, but they were kicked out as they were all talking about this. And Paul Revere, William Dawes, and Thomas Prescott heard about them, and then they came back to Boston, and then all of a sudden they realized that the British soldiers weren't out and about like they usually were, even off duty, and there was something going on. So Paul Revere, he hopped up on the Old North Church, the tallest building in Boston, up the steeple there, and he looks down upon their encampment right there where the Charles River meets the Boston Harbor, and he notices, what are they doing? They're exercising. What the heck? And they're practicing marching and all this. This is not like them at all. He said something was going on, and they put 2 and 2 together. And they figured they found out about the munitions. They know where it is, and they're on their way out here, without a doubt. Now I'm going to pull over and let these cars go by me. And so what they did was they came out here and they put a man, one of the men here in the taverns, a very well-respected farmer. His name was John Parker. They gave him the title captain, even though he didn't wear bars on his shoulders or anything like that. And they put him in charge to get the men together. And everywhere, all around the areas, the other colonies, they all had these little militias. They didn't keep together at all in one way or another. They weren't linked together. But every city, every town, every county, every state or territory would have its own little militias, okay? And this was one that they were going to start. And him as a farmer, he decided, well, what we're going to do is we're going to stop these British soldiers at the Lexington Green. If they do come out here, they didn't know, because the Lexington Green formed a fork in the paths out there, just as it does in the roads, as we'll see today. And this way, he knew which path the British soldiers knew about, and he had all his men come in the other path to the Lexington Green, and they would practice this all the time. In the evenings, and so the men could get their sleep and get up early in the morning to tend to their farming duties. And they would do this, and it became like a game to them. And they did it so much, and they were getting so good at it, as the taverns, there were men that lived in the taverns, and they would be warned the British soldiers were on their way, and then they would go to different farms, wake up the farmers, you know, supposedly, even though it was in the evenings, and then they each one had to go to so many farms themselves, and you know what I mean, and then they all come in a certain path, so they wouldn't meet up with the British soldiers, and they got so good at this, they said they could get together in a minute, and that's how they became known as the Minutemen, okay, at Lexington. And then Paul Revere, he hooks up with the custodian of the sexton of the Old North Church, knowing that he can see. Now I'm going to stop, you guys got